Okay, my name is Riko, and this is my AGDQ 2018 submission for Crash Bandicoot N Sane Trilogy, Crash to any percent. So the N Sane Trilogy is the remake of the first three Crash Bandicoot games, was released earlier this year in June. They all play fairly differently from both the original games and themselves. One thing I just did there is, in the original Crash 2, you could actually skip the intro and just warp right into the warp room. In this game, you can't. When you skip the cutscene, it goes right into the intro, but funnily enough, it lets you quit out of the intro into the warp room. So one of the biggest changes in the N Sane Trilogy is a lot of the movement. Because they remade the game from the ground up, and they didn't use any of the original code because it was too old, a lot of the glitched movement that was in the original game is no longer there. So the neutral slide spin is gone. So fastest form of movement in this game, in most cases, is the slide spin. So sliding is the fastest form of movement in the game, but you cannot slide constantly. So in between you spin, which it brings you back down to your base movement speed, but if you were to constantly slide, then you would stop moving. So it's actually faster to just very quickly drop down to your base movement speed and then very quickly get back up to it. Also of note is that another movement tech that is no longer in the game from the original is zigzagging. In the original game, you could alternate between diagonals while you're moving. It alternating diagonals was faster than just moving straight. In this version, it actually slows you down. So as a result, it's actually much slower to zigzag, and it's also a little slower to turn direction while you're in the air. One thing to note is that for whatever reason on those bridges, the breakable bridges, it's actually, for whatever reason, slide spinning slows you down, which is why I slide jumped on them. So yeah, so the basic movement is essentially slide spinning, and that was actually the first level. Level order is still dictated mostly by masks. However, how masks are used is different than in the original Crash 2. In the original Crash 2, you never want to go invincible. So the way masks work in Crash Bandicoot in general is that you get these special crates that give you a mask named Aku Aku, and he serves as an extra hit point for you. So if you break one of the crates with him, you'll see one of them up here. So if you break one of the crates, you get one extra hit point. If you break two Aku Aku crates, then he becomes gold, and he protects you from 2 hits. If you break 3, he attaches to your face, and you temporarily go invincible. And in the original game, this was actually slower because it slowed down the movement speed of neutral slide spin. In the N Sane Trilogy, going invincible actually doesn't slow you down. In fact, it speeds up your base movement, so like your base running speed is much faster. However, it doesn't speed up your slide speed movement, or your slide spin movement, and slide spinning is still just a little bit faster than the base movement speed. So in terms of movement speed, third mass form actually doesn't do much at all. And because when you go invincible, you get this little animation where Crash like hops in the air and is really happy, and then he starts moving, it's actually a little slower in a lot of cases to go for the third mass form still. But because your actual movement doesn't slow down, there are actually many cases where it's actually beneficial to go third mass form. So the route is pretty much designed to get third mass form where it's useful and skip it where it's not useful. And one movement tech I did in those pits is actually one of the only movement techs that managed to transition over from the original game, is the glitch high jump. So in the original game, there was a movement called the glitch high jump where if you crouch and you jump, you get a higher jump. But if you crouch and then jump, and then during the jump you spin, you get an even higher jump, which was not originally intended in the original version of the game. In the Sane Trilogy, they actually kept it, and in some cases it actually made it, like, it feels like it's more effective. So they kept that, so the glitch high jump is still possible in this game, and I'll be doing it at the beginning of Hang 8 as well. So in those pits, in the previous level of the pits, you can use it to jump out of those, like, large holes that are, you're not, originally not supposed to be able to do that, but they kept it in as an Easter egg. So that there was a glitch high jump. The name's a bit of a misnomer now because it was, I'm pretty sure, actually intended to be put in as like a nice little Easter egg for speedrunners. Because in the original demo that was released to a lot of GameStop stores, that the glitch high jump actually wasn't in it, and then they added it in later in the final version of the game. So this level is Hang 8. There's a little timer in the bottom right corner. So this level is one of the 2 levels in the game where if you reach the end of the level before that timer runs out, you get a special timer gem. However, grabbing the gem is actually slower because Crash has to throw it up in the warp room, and it actually... And then it also triggers a cutscene, so it wastes time to grab it, so I just run around it. And I guess I also didn't mention, like, the goal of this game. So this is Crash 2 Any%, and the goal of the game is to finish all 25 levels and defeat the final boss, Dr. Neocortex. And to finish each level, you have to grab the purple crystal. So they're pretty much laid out along the path. So... yeah. So every level you go in, you grab the crystal, and you leave the level. And I guess I didn't mention in the second level, the pits, there is a fork in the path. The path on the left is the one that has the crystal, so the path on the right is just not visited in any %. So this level's Snuggle. There's a mask right there, but it's not beneficial to have invincibility in this level in any %, so I just jump over it. So ice physics in this game are a little crazy. There's, like, ice momentum is very odd. Oh, I got hit by some randomness there. So the Nitro crates, they are explosive crates where if you touch them in any way, they explode and you take damage. The Nitro crates also have this property where they will randomly jump, and in the Sane Trilogy, they jump very high sometimes, and that's what happened there. I tried to slide jump over them, and one of them hopped at right that moment, and I got hit by it, and there really wasn't much I could do about it, but it's not a big deal. So I wanted to damage abuse anyway to grab that mask, but ice is interesting in this game where if you slide and then you go neutral on your direction input, so you just let the control stick go back to the center, you will keep your momentum from the slide, which is very akin to the neutral slide movement in the original Crash 2. So you can neutral slide spin, and you can even neutral slide jump, which is what I was doing on the ice there, where I would slide, and then while I was sliding, I'd let go of the directional input, and then I would jump, and I would keep the sliding momentum throughout the jump. But ice also has this unique property where if you jump over something that is not ice, so like an enemy or like the snow surface, then the momentum disappears. So, and this is the last level of the first warp room. This is Turtle Woods. It's technically the first level of the game. Part of the reason I did the warp room backwards and started with level 5 is, again, because of masks. So I want to leave Turtle Woods with 2 masks, because one thing they did change in the Sane Trilogy version of this game is that you can actually take masks into most of the boss fights, whereas in the original game you can only take the masks into the second one. So that mud is interesting in that normally you have to like wade very slowly through it, but if you slide spin through it, then you maintain all of your speed. So I want to take 2 masks into the first boss, Ripperoo, because the first 2 levels I visit in the second warp room, it will be very beneficial to have invincibility. So right there, I dropped the spin and the slide, so I got stuck wading through the water. So that's the biggest reason I did the warp room backwards, is that Crash Dash, the first level I entered, which is level 5, it actually takes your mask from you. So I can't leave that level with masks, so I don't want to have it be the last level in the warp room. And because of the way the warp room is designed, it is just overall faster to do them in consecutive order when possible. So to save time, it's better to just do the entire warp room backwards. And that's all of warp room 1, so we will be going to the first boss after this. So I'm only about 4 to 5 seconds behind my PB. That's not that bad. So my PB in this game is 1 hour and 3 minutes flat, which is loadless is 48 minutes and 54 seconds. We do loadless in the Sane Trilogy because load times vary between all versions of PS4 and hard drive types. This boss is essentially an auto-scroller. He does the exact same thing every time, and it's like you just stand in one spot and wait for him to do anything. So, and then you hit him when he hurts himself off of the Nitro. So I'm just going to explain the loadless during this fight. So we do loadless because all 3 models of PS4 have different load times, and even the different hard drive types between hard disk drive or solid state drive, they drastically affect loads. I have a standard PS4 currently, which is the slowest load times. PS4 Slim is a little faster, it's only a couple seconds though, but PS4 Pro saves like 3 minutes in loads. So if we didn't do loadless, then world record would be very free for PS4 Pros. So for the sake of fairness, we decided to do loadless timing. I do plan on getting a PS4 Pro essentially just for more comfort and just like less downtime between levels. So on a PS4 Pro, this would probably be about like a 1 hour or maybe even like a sub 1 hour. So loadless this time is 48:54, which is actually the current world record of this category for Sane Trilogy. So yeah, that was Ripperoo. Like I said, he's a very straightforward boss. You wait for him to blow himself up and then you hit him. And that's all of Warp Room 1. And the first level we'll be going into is Snowbiz, which is level 6. This will be the first level where I will try to use invincibility, because when you go invincible, a lot of the stomper obstacles just stop working. So it's very useful to just be able to slide through all of them without having to wait on any of them. And additionally, there are porcupine enemies in this level that when they put their spikes up, you cannot actually hit them. So when you go invincible, you can just run through them without taking damage. That was another use of the ice physics. I let go of my directional input when I did the jump and I went flying. So that's one of the porcupine enemies, and this is the invincibility. This lasts for about 25 seconds, I believe. So here, this piston is not moving because I'm invincible, so just let me go right through it. And these ones are also not moving. That's another use of the neutral slide movement. I'm gonna wait this one out just because I was a little behind. Oh. That was an example of the ice momentum halting because I went over non-ice. And then I'm gonna grab the invincibility here also to just make it easier to go through these rollers. Got a little stuck there. And that's Snowbiz, and that's the first example of using invincibility to your advantage. There are several more levels where I'll be doing that. And there's a lot more in this version than in Crash 2, because in Crash 2, because the movement slows you down in general, it's only really useful in one level. But in the Sane Trilogy, it is useful in a lot of spots. And actually, the next place it will be useful is the level I'm about to go to next. So after doing Snowbiz, I'm gonna double back to the end of the warp room, and I'm gonna do the eel deal. Hi Coco, bye Coco. So one thing, this is irrelevant to the 90%, but one thing I want to point out in as I was entering the level, I passed Crash's sister, Coco. So they added the ability to play as Coco in almost every level in the Sane Trilogy. However, in terms of mechanics, she is not different from Crash at all, aside from like her model's a little different, I believe, which is it's significant in very few, if any, spots. But actually grabbing Coco and changing to her takes time, and there are some levels where you can't play as her. So it's overall just not useful to grab her in any percent, or in general. So what I'm doing in this level is that I'm just slide jumping on the sides of the walls. Because of the way the wall's hitboxes work, it pushes you down like almost immediately after the jump, so you can chain more slides faster. So it's a little faster than slide spinning. I picked this up actually from watching Stuart0000, or just Stuart. He does a bunch of time trials, and he also does Crash 2 speedruns. He's the current second place holder, and he and I have traded world records quite a bit. I found him doing that and thought it was really clever. So I'm just gonna damage abuse here because the next level I'm going to enter is another chase level, so I will be losing my mask when I enter it anyway. And that's the deal. So these next two levels remove all of your masks, which is why I went to the EO deal after Snowbiz. Because if I had done the level in the correct order, then by the time I had reached the EO deal, I would not have had any masks. But the invincibility is very beneficial at the beginning because it lets me skip all of those obstacles, and it lets me go through the electric water without getting shocked. So this is the second chase level. This is Crash Crush. It adds another obstacle in the giant electric fence that you have to slide under, and they are a little more annoying in this version than the original version. In the original Crash 2, you could slide spin under them without like any threat of being hit by them, and that was only in Crash Crush. In the remake, they made them work the same way as the electric fences in every other version of the game. And every other level of the game. So now, like, you have to be careful when you slide under them. So there's a fork in the path right here, but it doesn't have any benefit for us in any percent. So the chase levels are neat because there are a lot of memorization and like knowing what's coming up before it actually reaches a screen. They're actually among my favorite levels in both the original games and the Sane Trilogy because of this. I glitch high jumped over there to get over the mine, because if you touch those mines, then you are stunned for a moment. You don't die, but you lose a couple seconds, and you're also very threatened by the boulder because you get stuck for a couple seconds. Oh, I almost fell into the hole there. These turbo pads are really nice, but they have this weird property where if you try to like slide or spin over them, then you just don't get the boost, which is a little annoying at times. One thing haven't mentioned is regarding the ice is that every ending tunnel in this warp room has ice in it, so you can abuse the ice physics and just neutral slide jump over the platform that would normally have the gem if you broke every box in the level, and it just saves a bit of time to just jump over it. And it's only possible in this warp room because of the ice. Right, so the next level I'm entering is Barret, and this is the first of 2 bear levels in the run. Well, technically 3. There's a level that is part bear level towards the end of it, so I guess like 2.5. So the bear is one of the 2 or 3, I would say, vehicle levels. So in this level, this bear is polar, and you spend the entire level traveling on him. You can hold circle or R1 to charge with him, but unlike the tiger in Crash 3, you cannot charge continuously. You eventually will stop. So the fastest movement in this level is to charge and then jump before the charge ends, because you can charge immediately out of the landing of a jump. Whereas if you charge and then just let the charge run out, there's a bit of downtime where you can't charge. So yeah. These levels are pretty straightforward, but they're also a little terrifying because every death animation in this type of level is very long. And sometimes because of how fast you go, it gets a little unwieldy. So I took my time there to get past those totems or whatever they are. Yeah, this level overall it's a very short level, and it's kind of fun. I'm not the biggest fan of vehicles, but that's one of the better ones. So the next level is Air Crash. This will be the second river level, similar to Hang 8 in the first warp room. And this one actually has a really neat trick in it, which I will explain when I get to it. Do a glitch high jump there to just save time going up those stairs. So you can actually hug the side of the wall and dodge all of those mines, which is very nice. You can do it in Hang 8 also, but in the original Crash 2 you could not do it in Air Crash. So I'm actually going to skip this checkpoint, and there's a reason for this. So a glitch high jump to jump over those obstacles, I spin this guy, I grab the crystal, and then I Death Abuse. So this will take me back to the first checkpoint. And then here I'm going to bounce on these crates. Oh, and then I'm gonna miss one of them, apparently. So let's try that again. There we go. So this is a secret exit. In Crash 2, there are 5 secret exits that will take you to a special 6th warp room and unlock either secret entrances to levels or, in 2 cases, another level entirely. And in the original Crash 2, this wasn't feasible to leave the level early, just because you could not actually leave the secret warp room aside from entering any of these levels and then exiting it, because there was no other way out. They changed it in the Sane Trilogy, where the 6th warp room is actually just below the first warp room, so you can use the secret exit to leave the level, and then just go up. And then here I am. So this was discovered by another Crash Sane Trilogy runner named Radmots, and he was the one who told me about it, where because the crystal is about midway through Air Crash, you actually just skip the entire last portion of the level by just death abusing back to the first checkpoint and then taking the secret exit and then riding up back to the second warp room. So there are 5 levels where you can do that, but it's only 2 levels where it's actually useful because a lot of the secret exits are at the end of levels anyway. The other level where it is useful is level 17 in Warp Room 4, but okay, that was interesting. And there it only saves a couple seconds, but for Air Crash it saves, I believe, 8 to 10 seconds and possibly more. So this boss is the Komodo Bros. Essentially, the big guy, Komodo Mo, will spin the little guy, Komodo Joe, at you, and you just have to dodge him until he stops spinning. And in between and in the last phase, Komodo Joe will throw these knives at you, and you just have to dodge them, and then hit Joe into Mo. And that's the boss fight. Crash 2's boss fights are not particularly difficult. The Crash series in general does not have very crazy boss fights, but Crash 2 is especially notorious for not having difficult boss fights. And that's all of Warp Room 2. So we'll be going into Warp Room 3 now. And once again, I'll be doing this warp room backwards for sake of masks. A lot of the warp room routing in this category, I figured out on my own, Just because when the game came out, a lot of people were pushing the completion categories 100% and 102%, so I just said to myself, well, I believe there's some stuff to any percent. So I sat down and routed a lot of the path and discussed it with another runner and things like that. So this is the third and final chase level, but in this level, instead of getting chased by a boulder, you get chased by a bear. But in essence, it plays pretty much the same. There are these lizards, but they're not really much of a threat. This section in particular is kind of annoying because the holes are in a very erratic pattern, so it's a little annoying to get through them. I'm gonna play this a little safe. It's very, very unforgiving to die in this level, just because there's so many gaps between checkpoints. So this is the second instance of using the bear, and you're getting chased by a bear while on a bear. So you can actually jump over these fences, which is very nice. I'm not actually sure if it's possible to jump over them in the original version, but if it is, it's a much tighter window. There is a secret exit in this level, but you have to backtrack back to that section to reach it, so it's just not worth going for. Because even though you don't have to reach the end of the level, you still have to traverse through all of the warp rooms to get back up to this one, so it ultimately doesn't save time. So I decided to enter level 13 instead of 14 next. This is because this is Bear Down. This is the second and final bear level. And much like the other levels, this takes away your masks, but masks will be very vital later on in this warp room. So I wanted to get all the mask levels out of the way first. So I actually do a glitch high jump to skip that second platform. For whatever reason, when you slide down like cliffs like that in the Sane Trilogy, sometimes you'll keep your momentum and sometimes you won't. In Bear Down, the case is that for whatever reason you won't. So there, I wanted to dodge the guys holding the ice blocks, so you can actually hug the left side of the wall and just like dodge them entirely, which is very nice. These guys are actually kind of annoying because their cycles get messed up depending on how fast you're going. So when you go fast, it's actually a little annoying to dodge them. And then I'm going to jump over this hole. I'm going to take this safe because it's actually very annoying to try and get through that fast. Oh, that was a movement glitch from the ice. The ice is very, very finicky, so I charged on the ice and it messed up my direction. So even though I was holding right on the D-pad, I did not get any movement. I did not get any change in direction, so that was unfortunate. That could have been a worse death, though, to be honest. And then we're just gonna charge through them. Yeah. Bear Down is personally one of my least favorite levels for things like that, but that could have gone a lot worse, to be honest. So the next level is Road to Ruin. This level is fairly infamous in the old version in 100% runs because it's just a very noticeable difficulty spike. It's not nearly as bad in any percent, and you can actually do a lot of cool corner cuts in it, so I actually enjoy this level quite a bit. This level also in 100% and 102% has a lot of really cool jumps to it. So I'm going to use a glitch jump there. I'm also going to use one there, or I could drop the spin and then just die, apparently. This game does drop your inputs a little bit sometimes. It doesn't drop them nearly as much as the original trilogy did, but it does still do it occasionally. So that's what I was trying to do the first time, was get the glitch high jump to skip that rat. So I'm going to do a bit of a corner cut here. I'm also going to do a corner cut here. I'm not going to corner cut here, though, because there's a mask hidden there that I want. So. Glitch high jump to skip that staircase. So aside from the mask, or aside from the death, that was actually a very solid road to ruin. And the death was from a dropped input, which thankfully does not happen too often. That was just a very unfortunate case where it did. So the next level is Sooner or Later. And this level is very interesting, but also very, very unforgiving. I want to take 2 masks into this because this is one of the levels where I'm going to abuse invincibility the most. And it's actually much slower if I don't get the invincibility. So. This level also introduces deep water, and I think it's the only level that has deep water in it. And the deep water functions like mud, so I can slide spin through it, even though normally I would be forced to wade through it, so right there. So this guy, just gonna wait him out a little bit, and then I can actually slide spin through his fire, which actually was significantly more difficult in the original Crash 2. So the fact that the window is a lot nicer is very convenient. Alright, so I made it to the invincibility, which is very, very nice. So now I can tear through all of this without any fear. Unfortunately, in this version of the game, if you reach another mask, you don't reset the invincibility, which is a bit unfortunate. So there is another mask coming up here, so hopefully I can get it. Yep, we're good. Oh, that was close. Sailing's a bit lower in this version compared to the original game, so it's a lot easier to get knocked down. So this one I'll be carrying out through most of the rest of the level, but it lets me skip this guy. And then lets me skip this guy. This guy's actually not difficult to skip otherwise, though, but just the invincibility makes it a lot nicer. And there we go. And the next level is Plant Food. I am not the biggest fan of this level, honestly. It's got a lot of very tricky things in it that could go wrong. And it's a very unforgiving level if it goes wrong, but we'll see how it goes. This is the last of the river levels, and it is, in my opinion, definitely the hardest one. So, this is also the other level that has a timer in it. So, if you beat the timer to the end of the level, you get the yellow gem, but much like the timer gem in Hang 8, I'm going to skip it because it wastes time to grab it. So, this jump is actually possible, which is very nice. That one is also possible, but I messed it up. Try that again. Oh, that was kind of annoying. Unfortunately, the death messed up my cycles here, so I'm going to play it a little slower. Oh, man. I can't believe I didn't make that. That's very unfortunate. There's a reason I'm not a big fan of this level. This level has killed a lot of my runs, but hopefully it's not that bad right now. Oh, that could have been bad. So I'm going to slide here. I'm going to take the safe way. I could actually just glitch high jump over to that checkpoint, but that waterfall is kind of annoying with its hitbox, so I didn't want to risk it. Rather not waste more time. Oh boy. These whirlpools are very, very annoying. They have a vortex that sucks you in, and you can just... It's an auto death if you get sucked into it. So, I can do that much faster, but it's a lot less safe, and I've already lost a lot of time in this level, so I'm just gonna take my time a bit here. So I want to keep one of these masks, and those plants are very annoying to get through, so it's very good that I had 2 of them. So this last part, you're supposed to run up the side and kill these plants, because it's impossible to get through them otherwise, but that takes time, so I just damage boost through it. And then I'm going to go to the side here, because these Nitros, if they jump in the wrong time, will be very, very bad time loss. And that's plant food. So you usually don't ever leave this level with masks, which is fortunate because the next boss is Tiny, and he is the only boss in the game where you can't bring masks into him. Well, him and the final boss, Cortex, but Cortex, I've heard you can bring masks into him, but it is pointless to do so, because he doesn't, like, there's no use for them in that level. You can't get hit. So, Tiny is the most annoying boss in the game. There is a running joke that he is the hardest boss in the game, and I think you could argue that solely because there is a lot of RNG to this fight. There is not a lot of RNG in Crash Bandicoot 2. This is one of the few instances where there is RNG. So essentially, Tiny hops after you on these platforms, and eventually some of them will fall down. The ones that fall are random. So you want to trick him into falling. And generally, the strategy here is to just run around the outer rim and just hope for the best. That's very unfortunate. Let's see if I can trick him. Nope, too late. Oh man. I can't believe I fat fingered and accidentally body slammed. So the body slam and the slide are on the same button. So that was the reason for that. Let's see if this goes a little better. That was very, very unfortunate. Like I said, hardest boss. Oh wow, I actually managed to trick him. That's nice. This has been some very bad RNG along with that death. That was very unfortunate. Let's see how this goes. That's also unfortunate. Let's see if I can trick him. There we go. So corners are really bad in the last phase because it's hard to get him over them, but thankfully in the Sane Trilogy, it's actually very easy to trick him over them. But in the original, that would have been very difficult to do. So that was a very unfortunate Tiny, but it usually doesn't go that bad. And it's the only real case of like hard RNG in the entire run. So now we're on to Warp Room 4. And the first level we're going to enter is Behaving. This level introduces the bees. I do not like the bees. But generally you will pass these like large beehives, and every time you do there's like a swarm of 5 bees that chase you. And thankfully you can slide spin just fast enough to get through them. Like so here. They stop chasing you after a certain point, usually over a hole. This red dirt, you can actually dig under, which is how you're supposed to get past the bees because they can't attack you while you're under the dirt. But that's slower, so we just don't do it. I think I accidentally slid one of the bees into the Nitro behind me. So there I was able to hug the left side of the wall and get past that electric fence. The electric fence is annoying in that it actually has a hitbox above it, so you can't just jump over it like you could in the original, but it doesn't have hitboxes to the side of it. So you can actually hug into the wall just enough to get past it. You unfortunately can't do that in this level's sister level, Digging It, but there's another way to get through all that, so it's fine. Oh, it dropped a spin there. I was going for a glitch high, but thankfully I didn't hit any of those nitros, so it worked out fine. And that was behaving. So this next level is personally one of my least favorite in the game. This is Ruination. It lives up to its name. This is a very, very tricky level. I do have some cool strats in it, though, to make it go a little quicker. I'm going to abuse masks and damage abusing to get through things. But overall, this level is very tricky. This is the evil cousin of Road to Ruin. Like, right down to the part that there's a formation at the beginning that looks very similar to Road to Ruins, but it's hidden by a nitro. So, like, if you go blindly into it like Road to Ruins, you blow up. So I jump over that. So yeah, there's a nitro behind those stacks. And it's very, very clever and evil of the level designers to do that. So I could have cut the corner there, but I wanted to grab that checkpoint just for the sake of safety. I can glitch high over that and hope I don't get hit by the Nitro RNG. This formation is also in Road to Ruin, but this version is Nitros, which is also very unforgiving. So in the original Crash 2, you would death abuse at that checkpoint to reset the cycles to be more favorable. You can do that in this version, but it makes the cycles more unfavorable, so it's not preferred. And here I just damage abuse instead. And then I glitch high over those. And this is where the level gets really annoying. Oh, okay. I'll work with that, I guess. Oh, I can't believe I made that. That is a very tricky set of jumps to pull off. But that worked out in my favor very well, which is very nice. This level actually went really well. I could have glitch hide from that second to last platform, but it's a bit of a tricky jump, so I decided to just take the safe route. But man, that was actually a phenomenal Ruination. So the next level is Cold Hard Crash. This level is very notorious among casual players as being very difficult, and rightfully so. The completion route of this level, where you get all of the gems as well and all the boxes, is very, very evil. Thankfully, we don't have to do that in any percent, but it's still a bit of a tricky level. So I'm going to try very hard to not die in the early part of this level, because I actually want to take what is called the death route. So there are these platforms with skull and crossbones on them, where if you reach them without dying from the beginning of the level, you enter a secret path called the death route that usually houses a gem or extra crates or both. Cold Hard Crashes happens to have both. And you want to take it in Cold Hard Crash because the death route actually skips a majority of the second portion of the level. So like it just lets you skip the entire like middle portion of the level and just takes you to the end, which is very, very useful. So there's going to be a checkpoint coming up here, and from this point on, I do not want to die. And actually, in a marathon, I would consider skipping that checkpoint, because if you die before reaching a checkpoint, the death route will still remain open, which is very nice. I'm actually going to damage abuse there, because I don't want to have third mask form just yet. I'm going to wait out this penguin, because penguins with spinning hitboxes are actually a little annoying, and I want to take 2 masks into this death route. So I'll hit this checkpoint for safety, but hopefully I will not need it. So this is the death route. It's a bit of annoying death route, but it's not that bad, to be honest. So I want the invincibility here. So the fastest form of movement on ice, which I guess I never really said because there's not huge patches of ice, is sliding, immediately going neutral, and then sliding again. So I wanted to slide into the wall there because it would let me skip that gem, because grabbing that gem is a big time waster, because you have to throw it up into the warp room and then it triggers a cutscene where you talk to Nitrous Brio. It's an ally of yours in this game who is telling you to grab all the gems instead of the crystals. I never really said the story of this game because it's not super relevant, but it's not a very good story. But the story is that Crash has been kidnapped by Cortex. It dropped my jump. That's actually very bad. Crash has been kidnapped by Cortex, and Cortex is telling him that he wants to save the world, and to do so he has to gather the 25 crystals. Cortex is lying, as you find out at the end of the game, but everybody knows by this point. And during this time, you collect a gem, and Brio tells you, no, Cortex is lying, you want to collect all the gems. And that's essentially the story. And then Coco, Crash's sister, is kind of there just telling you, I don't know who to trust, just collect everything. So that death was really bad, because normally I would be entering Hanging Out next, and that's why I wanted to have two masks, but that death means I'm actually going to reroute this. Because I actually really want to enter. It's vital to have two masks and Hanging Out. So I will be entering Digging It next. Invincibility is very useful in Digging It, but it is more useful in Hanging Out. So ideally I would have entered Hanging Out, had two masks, and then like left Hanging Out with two masks and then done Digging It, but it didn't work out like that, so we'll just do Digging It first, and it'll be a little slower than normal. Very unfortunate that it dropped my jump at that last moment. This is also technically the more optimal route to do, because it's less traversing through the warp room, but it is much easier to leave two masks with Cold Hard in Cold Hard Crash, I believe, than in Digging It, so for the sake of consistency, I generally go to Digging It last. So I'm gonna grab this mask and be a little safe about it, because I really do not want to get hit. That will make Hanging Out very disappointing. So I'm gonna wait out this, or it'll just end for me. And then I want to wait out this electric fence. So here I would have normally had the invincibility, and as a result I would have just slide spin through those electric fences, but I had to wait them out because I really want to take both masks out of this level. It's very vital actually for doing Hanging Out the correct way. But yeah, that's the usefulness of invincibility in Digging It, is those electric fences. And normally if I didn't have invincibility, I would damage boost through them, but again, I really need the masks in Hanging Out, so. And then I'm gonna wait this out, and I'm gonna spin away that bee. The beehives are also in this level, but they're a lot slower. I'm just gonna be really safe here, and just, they can't hit you while you're underground, so even though that's slower, it is much safer for me to do it that way, so. And I really want to show off the Hanging Out thing, so I'm going to do it again here, actually. These bombs that these plants throw are actually very annoying, and they can actually blow you up mid-air, which is very, very unfortunate. I'm going to get away from that bee. So hopefully I don't get hit in this last leg of this level. So I'm going to take another secret exit, which is a very minor time save, but it is a time save. So, okay, we made it out. That's great. So this will take me back to the 6th warp room. This saves about 2 seconds, I believe, over finishing the rest of the level. So it's not as big as the air crash time save, but it still is a time save. So we're gonna go back up to the 4th warp room. And we're gonna enter Hanging Out. So Hanging Out was the one level in the original Crash 2 where you wanted to have invincibility, and that hasn't changed in the Sane Trilogy. So I'm gonna wait this out a little bit, and then you can actually just slide spin under that guy, which is very nice. Getting through that guy in the original game was very tricky, so the common practice was to just wait him out. I'm gonna take this a little slow because I really do not want to get hit here, and we should be good to go after this. So there's a mask coming up. It is the only mask in the level, which is why you want to enter this level with 2 masks. I'll wait these guys out. Let's see if I can squeeze here. And we're good. Okay. So I grab the invincibility here. And then you can actually just slide under these pipes to get through everything. The other method you could do is you can move on the hanging rails. So when you're invincible, you move significantly faster on the hanging rails, but it is actually a little faster to go down on the hot pipes and just slide spin over them while you're invincible. Both of them are valid, but the hot pipe method is a little faster. So, and then that's hanging out. And that's all of Warp 4, so we're nearing the end of the game. Next up will be the fourth boss, is the fight with Dr. Engine. This fight is probably the most challenging in the game to do fast. Essentially, Engine has a giant machine, like a giant robot, that you have to destroy, and there are 5 parts of it you have to destroy individually. It's got 2 arms, 2 shoulders, and a center, like, cannon. And in the original, you could actually destroy 2 pieces at the same time. I believe it's still possible in the Sane Trilogy, but it's very, very precise, so generally it's not gone for. They also made his shoulders take more hits, and it's also a lot harder to hit him as much. So here, I want to line up here. Each of the arms takes 10 hits, and then each of the shoulders, I believe, takes 12. They used to take 5 in the original trilogy, which is why this fight takes longer now. But I want to hit these as much as I can. So what makes it harder to destroy both is that now when one of the pieces malfunctions, Engine immediately stops moving the other piece. And he like closes it so it's no longer vulnerable. Well, that was actually very nice. I managed to destroy both of them really quickly. So this is where the shoulders are really annoying because it takes forever to kill them now. But it's still fairly consistent to be able to hit them. It just takes a bit more time than before. There we go. So the last shoulder should also be on its last few hit points. Oh, I missed. Thankfully, if you hit Engine before he actually attacks, he doesn't attack, which was not the case in the original. So this is the last phase. So he destroys the platform and you have to like dodge him. Oh, that was very good. Oh my god, what? So, a change they made in the original, from the original to the Sane Trilogy, is that Engine used to always go to the right side after the first hit. They changed it so now he goes to either the right or the left side. Like he always starts the center, but the position he goes to next is random, and you can actually jump in time to hit him before the piece falls apart, but it's a little precise, so if he had gone to the left, I would have just waited it out. And it's very good I didn't get hit there, because I want to take 2 masks into Piston in the way, which is the next level. So this is the last warp room. This is where things get a little fun, kind of. Piston in a way is a very nice level, but it's also a rather difficult one. But it becomes a lot easier when you have 2 masks because you get invincibility right at the beginning, and it makes all of these pistons stop moving, which makes things a lot quicker. One unfortunate thing they did do in the Sane Trilogy is that they added a lot of invisible walls to these 2D levels. So in the original game, you could abuse the 3D range to just jump through a lot of these obstacles. You can't do that in the Sane Trilogy, which is why the invincibility is so vital. There are still some levels where you can, but this level is not one of them. And awesomely enough, there is another mask in this level, so you can actually use invincibility twice, which is very nice. I was actually not 100% sure I was going to make that jump. It would have been very unfortunate if I missed. I'm actually going to wait this out. because sometimes I just don't make it to that guy in time, and if he hits me, he pushes me down into the hole, which is very bad. So these ending tunnels are like curved to the left for whatever reason, so you just slowly move to the left as you go down them, which is a little annoying. But that's Piston away. That went very well, actually. So the next level is Rocket. This will be the first of 2 Jetpack levels. Something I actually did at the very beginning of the run, when I paused at the intro level and quit out into the menu, is I went into the options, and I changed the Jetpack controls to be inverted. In the original Crash 2, the Jetpack controls are inverted by default. In the Sane Trilogy, they actually are not inverted by default. I play the original Crash 2 as well as the Sane Trilogy. So to me, it is very jarring to play with non-inverted controls. It is a slight time loss to invert the controls at the beginning. It's probably like 2 or 3 seconds, but it's not significant enough for me to not do it. And it's a lot better than constantly having to learn and relearn inverted and non-inverted throughout the entire run. So these guys, they shock you, but you actually can move fast enough to hit them again before they shock you again, which is very nice. It's actually slightly slower to go for those checkpoints because you slow down when you spin, but for sake of safety, I was going to go for it anyway. But Rocket is not a particularly difficult level, so I'll probably just like take my time here. Oh, I got hit there. Oh well. That's fine. The next level is Night Fight, and it's not entirely optimal to have invincibility in it. It's not the worst, but it would have been neat to have. It's probably a little slower, but Night Fight is also a bit of a tricky level in terms of obstacles, so. Hopefully I won't get hit here. So if I don't get hit here, I'll actually mix up my route a little bit, and I'll save Pack Attack for last, and I'll get to that later if that is the case. I'm gonna grab this mask. Hopefully I don't get hit for the rest of the level. This is a nighttime level. It's one of the 2 in the game, but it's the only one you do in any percent, because the other one is totally fly, and it is a secret level. So it doesn't have a crystal in it, so it's not done in this category. But essentially, the level is pitch black, aside from these fireflies, and you have to carry them with you throughout the level, but the fireflies also only last a certain amount of time, so I'm going to avoid these spiky UFO things because you cannot hurt them, and they're kind of annoying to run through. Oh, that was a little close for comfort. So was that. This level does frighten me a little bit. Oh, and thankfully I got through that with 2 masks, so that's very nice, actually. So I'm going to divert off my path a little bit. I'm actually going to do Spaced Out before Pack Attack, and that's because there's a really cool damage abuse strat at the very beginning of Spaced Out that I came up with that I want to show off, and I don't want to risk getting hit in Pack Attack and not being able to do it. And it's a minor time loss to divert like this, but it's not a huge deal, honestly. So I will be doing Spaced Out next. So hopefully I can get this. This is a variation of it, at least. Yep, there. So by damage abusing, you can force those pistons to stop moving, which makes running through them a lot easier. That's not the exact way I normally do it, but it is a variation that managed to work out. So in the original version of Crash 2, you could actually bounce off of that pusher guy to land on the blue wall in front of that portion. Unfortunately, because of the 3D range, that's no longer a thing in the Sane Trilogy. So you can actually spin those ray beams. They actually shrink you and kill you if you don't. So. Oh, I actually probably could have made it through that. So that actually went tremendously well. So we'll be entering the last level now, which is Pack Attack. It is the second of 2 Jetpack levels. It's a little harder than Rocket, but overall it's not that bad. Especially because I have a mask, so I should not be in any major threat. And there is a mask in Pack Attack as well, so I should be good. This tight entrance right here is probably like the most annoying part of the level. Just getting between those 2 red hot pipes. I'm gonna grab this checkpoint for safety, even though it would be technically slower not to, so I'm gonna try and not get hit by him. I'll grab that checkpoint for safety, and then I'll grab this mask for safety. His thing, and then you spin him. He should be pretty alright now. So all of the vehicles in the Sane Trilogy, they maneuver and handle like a little differently than they do in the original games. It's like, it's not major, but it's like subtle enough that like it can throw you off. Like when I went back and played the original Crash 2 and Crash 3, it threw me off, like, with, like, how the little differences were. But that is all 25 levels, so I now have all 25 crystals. So Cortex is going to contact me. I would skip the cutscene normally. Well, I'm going to skip the cutscene, but essentially he's going to laugh and say his plan is complete, and then Coco is going to tell you, no, don't let him have the crystals, and then Cortex is going to escape, and you're going to do the boss fight with Cortex. The boss fight with Cortex is very infamous for being very anticlimactic and not difficult at all. Essentially, you ride your jetpack, you chase Cortex, you hit him 3 times. It is very, very easy in the original. And in the Sane Trilogy, they made it easier. So, the way it works in the Sane Trilogy now is that when Cortex is in range of being hit, a little alert, like a red exclamation mark and a sound effect, like they pop up and tell you, hey, you can hit Cortex. So this fight is actually a lot easier than it even was in the original. So there, the alert popped up. So Cortex actually, in the original game, the timer stopped the moment you dealt the last hit on Cortex. But in this version, beating Cortex actually gives you the running shoes from Crash 3, so you can move faster to run through the time trials. So timing actually ends when I get rid of the prompt to say, yeah, you got the running shoes. So, time. So that was actually a really solid run, a 105.09. I generally average 105s, 104s in this category, which is very solid. It's not that far off of, like, it's a very consistent and solid time to end on for this category. So and that was like, there were several mistakes in this run. There was deaths in Cold Hard Crash from dropped inputs, bear down. So generally, a 105 is a very solid time to have, and I believe my average is, yeah, my average is a 105.09, so I was very, very close to my average. So yeah, that was Crash Bandicoot N Sane Trilogy, Crash to any percent. The N Sane Trilogy has been very popular in terms of both, like, it was very hyped up prior to its release. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, Crash Bandicoot, I loved this. So it's sold very well. It's got a lot of fans. The speedrunning side of it has actually been very active, despite how different it is from the original games. A lot of people are picking it up and enjoying it and having like it's developed a lot as a speed game, and I think it would be a great addition to AGDQ. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you consider this run for the marathon. I'm Riko, and thank you for watching.